Good evening from Washington. I'm Larry O'Connor, and we pick up where we left off yesterday with a huge story coming out of the Department of Energy's Intelligence Division, confirming at least a bit that the origin of the COVID-19 virus was, in fact, that lab in Wuhan, China, confirming what many people had speculated and thought, and confirming what members of the Trump administration were saying when they were still in office in 2020. But why all of the controversy, why all of the finger pointing, why all of the denials from the Biden administration? And will we ever really know the origin of this virus? Why is that so hard? Joining us right now to discuss that from Heritage Foundation is Dustin Carmack. He's a research fellow for intelligence and also the former chief of staff for the director of national intelligence. Thanks for joining us, Dustin.
Thank you for having me.
First of all, there seems to be some suggestion that the Department of Energy got out over their skis here. And we saw in the Wall Street Journal report that they determined this fact or this assumption about the leak of the COVID-19 virus from the lab with low confidence. Can you sort of translate that for the rest of us from intelligence speak? What does low confidence means? Hey, we're not sure, at least to normal people speaking. But what does it mean in the intel world?
Yeah, there's been a lot of people slinging mud on the low confidence rating, and just so you know, too, the FBI came out last year saying with moderate confidence that they thought this came from the lab, but it essentially relies on kind of the number of sources they have, the reliability of those sources, and essentially it shows the track work is moving in one direction. So you've seen this now going from the IC saying, hey, it could be either or 2 or 3 years ago when we first were in office, all the way to now where the track work is all moving towards the lab leak theory. And that just means that the IC is uncovering new sources, new leads, and it's trying to unpack where this goes from here.
Okay. And by the way, while we're at it, the working theory that we were all fed by the intelligence communities or from the HHS or from Dr. Fauci was that this jumped from a bat or in some sort of food in that open air market to a human being. What kind of confidence do they have on that? Do we have any actual evidence ever that that occurred, or was it just people's speculation?
In 3 years, there has been zero evidence moving towards that natural origin route. They have
Right.
done tons of research, and like I said, China has been trying to block, any kind of, actual real investigation into this. But there has been no leads on this. And again, everybody just kind of puddled, shoveled that this was all natural origins. And anybody who thought this lab leak theory was a conspiracy theorist, and that is continuing to change.
And my understanding, and tell me if I'm wrong, please, if you know otherwise, but my understanding is that whenever there is a natural occurrence of a new virus like this, in this case, a coronavirus, animals are discovered. And those animals carry the nearest cousin to the human version of this virus. We haven't found those animals in any way whatsoever. The other piece of data that I've seen, again, well, first let's address that one. Is that the case? Should that be the case in this? That we
Yeah,
should see some animals that have some trace?
and that's correct, and we don't really have, an intelligence community unit that's out there, scouring the world for random animals looking for this. But there's, a ton of different authorities in the healthcare end that they collaborate with to try to kind of line these up. And my
Okay.
understanding is that they haven't been able to find anything in that space.
All right. And then also, I'm told that when there is a naturally occurring virus, like for instance, the SARS pandemic that we had, I think it was 2010, 2009, it doesn't spread nearly as fast as this. This spread so fast that most experts, virologists, said this isn't typical for a naturally occurring animal to human transfer of a virus. So that's more evidence to support that something else is going on here.
Yeah, the rapid pace of this, killed 1 million plus people in the United States, and how quickly it moved, clearly showed that there was some kind of, either through the gain of function type of research, possibly that, so a lab leak, essentially an accident. They haven't been able to pinpoint and say this was some kind of bioweapon, and the intelligence community has kind of said that they don't believe that to be the case. But this clearly is kind of showing a track work towards that accident theory.
And yet yesterday, I remember President Trump in May of 2020 at a press conference saying that he had seen evidence that suggested this came from the Wuhan lab, that the World Health Organization was making speculations not based on any actual access to the lab, which is true. They didn't have access. Chinese wouldn't let them in. So why is it now 3 years later we still don't have any more definitive answers on this other than this latest story? John Kirby yesterday said that the Biden administration made this a top priority. Good Lord, man. What more do you need?
Yeah, John Kirby was saying that President Biden tasked the Department of Energy labs to look into this, but the Department of Energy is a member of the intelligence community. The Trump administration tasked them just as much, and so we are essentially just taking over to the course of time. New intelligence comes to light, and then with China, it's one of the hardest targets to gather intelligence. And on top of that, like you said, they've been trying to play a cover-up exercise on any kind of actual investigation into this. So as we go forward, I think you'll see this kind of breadcrumb approach of new things coming. And I think you're going to see this line. And my former boss, John Ratcliffe, has said the same thing that this would always start to move over the course of time with new intelligence towards the lab leak theory.
What's really disconcerting about all of this is the attitude that we saw. It was almost like a slow walk from the White House yesterday. It's almost as if they don't want the answer to be that it came from a lab in China. Again, this is just my opinion and my analysis, but it looks like that's the last thing they want people saying, because then suddenly they'll have to do something about China.
Well, that is the case too. Especially they tried to kind of cool tensions after the Chinese spy balloon over in Germany and Munich, and it completely backfired. And so when it comes to actually having to use the tools, ramifications, and accountability that the Chinese deserve, and also just the truth, not for the United States, just for the United States, but the entire world, this has real outcomes that need to be seen.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think it's fair to say that this is a very important story, and we should get to the bottom of the origin of the COVID-19 virus because of the devastating impact it's had on the world, on this country, on our economy, on our children, on businesses. But but also, you just pointed out, it's the truth. Why is it not important to actually have the truth with this issue? That by itself should be reason enough to pursue this robustly. Do we have a concerted effort within the intelligence community, in your mind, to really get to the bottom of this?
I do believe so, and I think there's a kind of a connotation that listen, there's 18 different agencies that all do different types of intelligence. Some do open source, some do all source, some do human intelligence, some do signals intelligence, and so there's not some just bevy of they're looking underneath a rock and finding things every single day. But as new things come to light, they then that changes their analytical units lines on this, and so as you're going forward, it shouldn't be snuffed at that the Department of Energy is actually a crucial element in the intelligence community because of their work in the lab space. They have a very keen understanding of how these things work, and same with the Bureau in terms of being kind of an all-source intelligence unit. This should not be snuffed at because the CIA and NSA haven't come to a consensus on this yet.
Yeah, and yet, boy, they sure were Johnny on the spot with their consensus on Russian collusion during the 2020 election, on the validity of the Hunter Biden laptop. Boy, they reached consensus quickly on those things. They were wrong, Dustin, but they sure reached consensus.
Well, and I think that goes to the fact is that we've had medical researchers and newspapers and PolitiFacts of the world saying pants on fire to anybody that like Senator Cotton, who was trying to point to this early on. And so I really question where the real accountability is for people that essentially never are going to be held accountable for smearing people for the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, and as we try to get to the bottom of this very important issue, it sure would be nice to have a president where, in the back of our minds, we didn't think maybe he's compromised by the Chinese government because of relations that his son and brother have with them financially. But, that's just me. That's a pipe dream. Dustin Carmack, thanks for joining us. I appreciate it. We've got more coverage on this story, the reaction from the White House, as well as even late night comedians trying to poo poo this story. Why should we care where the COVID-19 came from? Keep it here. More to come on O'Connor Tonight.